All right, we are in the Thursday session for Bitcoin. We've got about 5 hours until the close on Thursday, and I've been updating Bitcoin every day, because of the volatility, wanting to show you what I'm looking at, what I'm watching. Currently, at the moment, Bitcoin is up 0.80%. We had a rally. Bitcoin had rallied up about 3%, and then it fizzled out. Right now, it is up just under 1% at 0.80%. We so far are having our lows from yesterday, Wednesday's lows, holding just above our 200 period moving average. We did hit the 200 EMA. This is a simple moving average here, but we did technical damage in that we took out the support zone here, and again, taking out the 100 period moving average, the pink line there. So the risk is that Bitcoin stays below the 100 period moving average. That would be extremely bearish. Again, I am of the opinion Bitcoin is in a bottoming process. If it doesn't bottom here, I will show you where it's going to go. Again, Bitcoin's average price right here, you can see that right there, is at the March peak right there. It's Bitcoin's average price. If I zoom out, you can see what's going on here. Bitcoin's average price is coming in at the horizontal support. This is the March peak. That was at 74,000 area. We have a trend line support. Should we lose the 200 period, which is very close to this, I'll show you that chart in a moment. But the risk is that we rally back up, but we can't get back above the 100 period moving average. Now over here in this choppiness, the last time we had the choppiness, we dropped below the 100 period, tried to get back above it, it failed. Dropped below it again, tried to get back above it, it failed again. Tried to get above it. This time we got above it and we bounced off of it and we were successful. Again, Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. We bounced off of it over here. We broke it here. We had the choppiness, got back above it here, and you stayed above it. Good things happening. We tested it right here. And again, now we're dropping below it. So the risk is that we stay below it and we can't get back above it and Bitcoin peaked out and topped. My guess is that's not the case. And again, I have the guts to tell you what I think. Signals have been bearish. I told you back over here at the January peak that, again, we were going to get a sell-off. I was correct about that. I was correct about the day of that top, predicting the day of that top, predicting the day of the January bottom. I told you we were moving towards the January bottom, and we were going to hit a trend line on the linear scaling in the daily time frame. When we hit it and we bounced off of it, and I called a bottom that day. I was correct about the top over here with hitting the weekly trend line, and here we hit it again and called another top right there. So I was correct about these tops and bottoms. I was correct about the sell-off. I told you I thought we had a pretty good chance of the January low holding. I was wrong about that, and the support zone was taken out. But I told you that if we did take it out, again, that we could, rather than wave 4, minor wave 4 completing here, it could complete over here. So again, if we can bounce off the 200 period, get back above the 100 period moving average, and break the downward trend line, then you got a shot at resuming the advance and going up and challenging the high at 109,000. So again, just wanted to show you, if we lose this area, you've got Bitcoin's average price down here, you've got horizontal support, and I'll show you the trend line on it in a moment. So again, last week I thought we would get a bottom this week. I thought that bottom would come above the January high, just above it there. Broke it. I still think we're going to carve out a bottom. We have a possible bottoming tail yesterday at the 200 period moving average. I told you that, again, even though we broke that level, I still think you're going to likely get a bottom this week. But I could be wrong. If we see the market sell off further, and Bitcoin could follow the traditional market sell off further with NVIDIA. If NVIDIA can't bounce off the 200 period, Trump's got the markets rattled with his tariffs. And if we get further concerns about that, we can go lower. But like I said, those tariffs are now to go in place next week on Canada and Mexico, 25% tariffs. Do we see a delay again? Do we see more concessions out of Mexico and Canada? Trump's saying not enough is being done about fentanyl coming into the United States and about the security of the border with fentanyl and other drugs. Do we see more concessions out of Mexico and Canada? Very well could. Do the tax cuts give us hope and we end up trying to rally? So again, going to be watching this. Right now we're down nearly 25% from when I called the peak over here. I told you in yesterday's video, I think we have a bottom here. Again, I tell you what I think. I could be wrong. I'm just telling you my opinion. I think because of the divergences that are developing here, I think we're going to get traction back up. And then we'll see. Short-term bottom, or is it a longer-term bottom where we go up and we try to challenge 109,000 and eventually get back above it? But you got to be able to get above the 100,000 level here, which that's where resistance is at. I'll show you that on a chart in a moment. But again, just some things to be thinking through and to pondering. The support level here at the 200, the support level down here, if that breaks, and that could take us to the 74 to 77,000, that area there. If we move back to Bitcoin's average price, we move back to horizontal support and the rising trend line. So I'm just trying to show you these levels of support. I could tell you, hey, I think we got a good shot of a bottom here. I told you that when we broke this level, the risk is we go down to the 200 period. Okay, we're bouncing off of it. The risk here is that we break the 200 period and keep going down to these other levels. So we'll be watching. We got bullish divergences, though, on the intraday charts. We'll see if they can give us traction back up. Had the support level. I talked about all these support levels right here. And again, the support zone with the January low and the low right here with the tariff sell-off the last time. Now, this is what happened with the tariff sell-off last time. We started to sell off. We dropped 6%, and then we recovered as we got concessions out of Mexico and Canada. Do we see something similar here? You got a possible inverted hammer here. And if we end up rallying back up, do we stall in this area here or here in the resistance zone? Previous support zone now turned resistance and end up going lower. So again, something I'll be watching. Again, you stay below the 100 period moving average, that's not going to be good. You get back above it, then you can see what happened. Very similar to what we had back with the consolidation into 2024 between March and the September time frame, where we saw the drops below the 100, but then you got back above it. We'll be watching to see how this unfolds. All the support over here now becomes resistance. So you got to be able to clear the resistance in order to resume the advance. And then you got to be able to clear the trend line. And let me just show you the longer term trend line coming in. If we lose this area of support, now I've talked about we're hitting another couple of trend lines, so don't get them mixed up. I'll show you the 2023 trend line. But before I do, just know that we are at extreme fear. Okay, we are at extreme fear with Bitcoin right now. And again, we're at levels where people panic, massive outflows. You know, you got all these big players, BlackRock and others selling. Again, we were told that wasn't going to happen. They're selling. They sold into the rally. We've become oversold. Eventually, they'll run it back up for either low or high, or to try to go higher, more likely to try to go higher, and they'll sell more. That's called distribution. The herd doesn't think that way. So we get these sell-offs when they take profits, and we see extreme fear. And then they take advantage of that fear. They sell their positions into the rally at higher levels, but they want top dollar, so then they buy it back, and we start seeing inflows go back in, and they run it back up. But we're seeing, what was it, yesterday? I think it was yesterday. We saw the largest outflow with the Bitcoin ETFs seen so far. And we're seeing BlackRock sell. Do they run it back up and, again, try to get top dollar and sell at higher levels? But keep this in mind. You know, you need to keep in mind what's going on right now, because this is, if we do rally to a new high, which I think we're going to, this is a preview of coming attractions. And when we get up to the highs, just like back up at the high at 109,000 and 108,000, December and the January peaks, we were told, oh no, this couldn't happen. And yet it did. We saw distribution. Herd never sees the selling coming. Now, I called correctly the January 20th top and the December 17th peak and told you we were going to get distribution. Now, we have gone lower than I thought we would go. Correct in anticipating we are going to see selling pressure. The herd doesn't do that. They get very bullish at tops and very bearish at bottoms. And right here, they're very bearish right now. So again, we could see a bottom surrounding the 200 period moving average. So just trying to show you that the sentiment right now and the amount of fear right now is very, very bearish, very, very negative, and that's where bottoms form. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like to chart, you like the indicators, please take the time to support the channel. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. If you take the time to do that, I thank you. Watch the video all the way through. I'm going to share with you the intraday charts at the end. Video, I'll cover support and resistance levels, where we could go if we go lower, where we could go if we go higher, and we'll talk about will Wednesday's low hold, all of that. See these intraday charts and hear commentary on them. Watch the video all the way through. And again, signals remain bearish. Warned you about these topping signals back at the top. And again, signals have been consistently bearish with momentum. And the trend signals soon flipped to bearish after that. And they've been bearish. Here we are at the 200 period. The balance of power went negative. We've got the sell signal here with the background. The cloud was taken out, triggering the sell signal here, all kinds of stuff. Momentum tried to turn bullish during the sideways move a couple of times, but then it flipped right back to bearish, and it remains bearish right now. So again, we'll see if we can see things flip back to bullish. Should we try to get traction around the 200, either above it or just below it? You lose that level, though, you're going down to the 74 to 77,000 area. Watch the video all the way through, and you will see those support levels. Horizontal and the trend line, horizontal support, the trend line of support, moving averages. I continue to point out, I got bullish divergences forming on my indicators. Here it is with momentum. Remember, the RSI is back at an extreme. It doesn't have a divergence, but other indicators do have a divergence and are back at extremes, like momentum here. And again, we'll be watching the 200. And again, we've been consistently bearish since the January peak. With momentum, and then that eventually flipped the trend signals to bearish. And again, if we don't rally here, you're going to see the weekly signals begin to all turn back to bearish. That would be very bearish indeed. But if we see a bounce, that could be prevented in the weekly time frame. We'll be watching. Quickly on the intraday charts, which you'll see in this video, again, we got the 13.9 signal here on the hourly chart. We went up to the 50 period moving average. We stalled. We got a 9 count there. Do we get a higher low, or do we go back and test this level, take it out, and again, maybe drop or tag? We didn't quite reach the 200. Do we tag it or drop below it? I'm going to be watching. Do we get a higher low on the price of Bitcoin here, or a lower low? And if we do, take out the 200. The risk is that we keep going, and that's why you need to watch the video all the way through. I'll show you the support levels. Weekly momentum had already turned bearish with the momentum line. Now we're seeing the trend signal trying to turn bearish as well. We're right here in the weekly time frame at the center line. We either need to firm up, or if we break this level and stay below it, the risk is we get a bigger sell-off. So again, by the end of the week, we need to see a recovery, or the risk is the weekly charts close the week out, all starting to turn bearish, or many of them turning bearish. Momentum already has in the weekly time frame. Do we now see the trend signals turn bearish in the weekly time frame? We saw the horizontal VWAP level of support break. Okay, we broke it, and we've come down, breaking below the January low, losing this area. We've come down now. These next levels of VWAP support right here. The 200 period is directly below, so is this VWAP level, weighted average price. If we can rebound, then you've got all this resistance in here and the VWAP resistance. So again, there's a lot of resistance up in here. If we get a recovery, we'll be watching that area closely. VWAP support that we're at right here, the blue line, takes us all the way back to the August low. The red line that we just went through was the higher low that set up at 52,000 in September. So those are levels. If we go down lower to horizontal support, you've got the green line right here, which takes us to the peak in March. That was the March high. See the green line right there? That is the peak in March. That's that green line right there. And then down here, again, you've got major support in this area. at the 74, 75,000 above it, which you'll see in the video, and then directly down over here, more support at around the 70,000 area, which was our breakout point. So you've got major support there, and I'll show you the support levels, horizontal support, later in the video. Now, I told you yesterday's video, again, I think that we are likely carving out the wave 4 here. I think we'll get the wave 5, and then I think we're going to top. Again, it could be that we topped over here if we stop making new highs and can't get back above the 100 period moving average. But this is what I think is going on. You got the 1, the 2. I think the intermediate wave 3 and 4 completed over here. We had all this choppiness. Now we're getting more, and I think you have now 1, 2, 3 over here, 3, and then now 4, and then I think you get 5, and then I think you get your top. But I told you that RSI could go deeper, and it is. We're seeing, again, extremes here as we hit our 200 period moving average. So this is what I think is going on. Could I be wrong and we go lower? Yeah, but I think you're probably going to try to bottom here. I told you I think they had a good shot of a bottom Tuesday or Wednesday. I think we got it on Wednesday. Told you on Tuesday, if we go lower, watch the 200 period, and we ended up hitting that. Now we have bullish divergences on the 4-hour chart on several indicators and the RSI. Now I'm blowing this up really big so you can see this. Again, this is the 2023 trend line from the low over here, and I'll just move it over now that you've seen that because it's intersecting with the horizontal support, and that's where Bitcoin's average price is coming in at. So again, we'll be watching that should we lose this area of support, and that's coming really in between the 74,000 area, the peak over here, and the 77,000 area, which is our trend line of support. Now, we don't have to reach that trend line. We may bottom at the 200 period, as so often is the case. The 100 period, the 100 and 200 period moving averages often act as support and resistance. But if we bounce here, we'll be watching the 100 period. If we break this level, I'll be watching the 74 to 77,000 area. This is the levels of support I'm watching. If I am wrong about bottom this week and we end up going lower and Trump's tariffs rattle markets, this is the area that we're likely going to move to. There's a confluence of support there. Okay, so we'll be watching. Hitting another trend line. Don't get this trend line from 2023 confused with the trend line with our linear and our log scaling. Now here is the linear scaling. The linear scaling, we have the low here and the low here. That's pointing up to right where we're at right now. So you have that trend line that we're trying to get traction off of. This is our linear scaling. That can produce a bottom. This trend line, if we lose this trend line, then again, the trend line I just showed you from the 2023 low then comes into play. So on our log scaling, that 2023 trend line, by the way, this is our linear scaling. And let's look at our log scaling trend line as well. People look at linear or log. I look at both. Most people just look at the linear. So we're trying to bounce off this trend line right now. Most people that look at charts aren't into it as much as you and I may be. And again, most people just look at the linear scaling and ignore the log scaling completely. I look at both, and that's why, again, you've got people looking at the linear scaling, so it's important to look at, but that long-term log scaling has some really incredible trend lines and support and resistance levels as well. So this is our linear trend line, and this is from the September higher low, again, in the more recent price action here from 2024. The one we just looked at a moment ago was a log scaling going back all the way to 2023 low. Now let's look at the log scaling in our more recent price action with the 2024 trend line. Now here's a trend line from, again, 2023. This is our log scaling. Don't get this confused with the 2024 trend lines I'm showing you, and I'm going to show you the trend line from the lows over here. And I'm bringing it up real big here so you can see it. Again, here's our trend line right here that we've broken now. This is a trend line we just looked at with the linear scaling from the September low connected here. That trend line with our log scaling, that's been broken. Okay, we might try to back test that if we get rejection up in here. And again, that downward trend line is coming in, intersecting with that area. But if we bounce right here, we've got the trend line right here from this low, and here I've excluded the shadow, and if you come up here, we've come up, and that's pointing up into this area. If you include the shadow, it's lower, it's below the 200 period moving average. If you include that shadow, it's below that level. And so that's just another trend line to be watching. But again, looking at the linear and the log trend lines from 2024, looking at the one from 2023, the log scaling, the long-term trend line, do we bounce? So again, we may not reach that 2023 trend line. We might try to bounce off of the trend line right here from the August low on our log scaling, or that trend line with our linear scaling, again, from the September higher low that's set up. So just some trend lines I'm watching. Let's look at the support and resistance areas here. If we lose this area, this is the next level of support. We're going to move down to 74 to 77,000. If we bounce here, let's look where we might go and find resistance. If we can bounce being at extremes here. And again, we've seen that at these extremes. We've seen a rebound here, and then we went lower and we formed a divergence, and then we got a bigger rebound, and then again here an even bigger rebound. These were counter trends, but you had some that were smaller, some that were bigger. The overall consolidation to go higher. Do we see something like that here, or do we just bust up through this area? Again, I am of the opinion we're still going to make new highs, but I'd like to tell you, and I'm of the opinion we're probably going to bounce surrounding the 200 period moving average. But I always like to tell you what could happen if I'm wrong about that, because again, I don't know the future. I'm just looking at support and resistance. I'm looking at the bullish divergences as we're hitting the 200 period moving average here. Right now we're flat, making the video with just under 5 hours till the session completes, the Thursday session completes. Let's look at the resistance up close now. Here's the support long term with these trend lines and the moving averages. Let's look at, and the horizontal support levels. Let's look at the resistance levels up close. Now right now, again, we've tried to rally. We had a 3% rally. We gave it back. We're still holding above that low at the 200 period. Could hold, could take it out a little bit and then rebound. That's possible if we get more volatility surrounding the tariffs, or something bigger by going all the way down to the 74 to 77,000 area. That's long-term support that I just showed you. If we find support here at the 200, bullish divergences play out on the hourly chart and the 30-minute chart and our 4-hour chart, watching if we rebound back up. Now you have the resistance area here. Again, this area was support. It's now resistance. We broke it. So you have some resistance in there. And we're going to see the 10 and 20 period moving average go down into this area as we rally back up. If we can get above them, get above this area, then again, you can move towards the trend line, possibly gravitate towards the 50 period and the 100 period as they're starting to roll over. So again, we'll be watching to see how this unfolds, as we're getting very, very oversold and there's extreme fear. Everybody that told us there's no possible way we're going down back over here when we hit the trend lines, we're now extremely bullish. Now they're very afraid. Again, the herd gets extremely bullish at tops and very bearish at bottoms, just like over here and some of these other lows in January and with the tariff sell-off low there in early February. Herd is very emotional. Okay, and you have to understand that. So again, I think you could carve out a bottom because sentiment is so negative surrounding our 200 period. Big players watch the 200 period moving average. So again, horizontal resistance here. If you clear that, you've got, again, the 100 period, and you got this trend line, this downward trend line, and you've got the cloud. You see the cloud right there. Above the cloud, okay, going into 100,000, you have the resistance here. This is the resistance zone here. If we can clear that, the trend line, the 100 period, and the cloud, then you've got your resistance up in here, which is from this lower high that's set up and the high at 109,000. Then you have more resistance and the resistance from back over here at 108,000. This is where we turned off the trend lines. When, I told you we were going to peak and turn off the trend lines and sell off, get a sell-off. The herd, they don't believe that's possible. That's why they're blindsided by it. Now, again, I was expecting the sell-off, but like I said, I was expecting the January low right here to hold. I told you if it didn't, and I told you it could break, that we would, again, probably dip below this area, and I talked about the 200 period moving average below it. I told you if we didn't finish wave 4 over here, then it's likely going to finish down here. And I got the top and the sell-off right, but we have gone lower than I expected. signals have been correct. They've been bearish, and even as we went back and tested the January low, they remained bearish, turned back to bullish. Still bearish. Now, if we could turn it around, they could turn back to bullish. So these are the levels that I'm watching here. And again, the divergences did play out at this peak and at this peak right here. And we had the same thing on the MACD. But we're becoming very oversold now with the stochastic, both on the traditional markets. We're down here at extremes with the stochastic. Could we recycle back up? Now, it could remain at extremes for an extended period of time or in the negative region, as we've seen with this sell-off. We've went sideways and it remained in the negative region. We couldn't recycle back up. The MACD remained in negative territory, so did the RSI. But if we can recover and the bullish divergences that are forming, can we see an attempted rebound back up to these levels of resistance that I'm talking about? Watch the 100 period moving average. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. We dropped below it here. We were jumping around it. We lost it. Okay, now the 200, if we can get back above it, rally off the 200, get back above the 100 period moving average, then that's going to be a sign of strength. If we get rejection at the 100 and remain below it, then that is very, very bearish. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. Watching on IBIT, the Bitcoin ETF, we formed a bullish divergence with our low yesterday. If we can recover, if that low can hold, we can recover to try to fill the gap and test the downward trend line of resistance. It may be, again, that I'm wrong about that low. I told you I was looking for a bottom either this week or Tuesday or Wednesday, more likely. But again, maybe we go a little bit lower and get it. That's possible. And still get a triple bullish divergence. That's certainly possible. And drop below the 200 and then get back above it. That is sometimes the case. Bounce surrounding the 200 either here or go a little bit lower and then here and then form a triple divergence. Then we'll be watching again. Do we make our way back up to the mid 5300 area or 53 area to try to fill the gap on IBIT? And if we do, then again, there's probably going to be sellers rounding this trend line right here once we fill the gap, and then we'll be watching that. This is a 60-minute chart, very similar to what we have on the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin. So again, going to be watching, does our bottoming tail hold here? Do we test it and just go a little bit lower and then rebound? Again, my guess is that we're going to try to bottom this week. I think you got a pretty good shot. We're going to try to do it with yesterday's low. But again, like I said, I could be wrong. Lose that 200 if Bitcoin and the crypto markets and the traditional markets get freaked out by Trump's tariffs coming on to begin next week on Canada and Mexico. And here on the 12th of March, we're going to get the tariffs on steel and aluminum. They go into effect, and we got another 10% tariff on China. If we go into freak out mode right now, again, that could rattle markets. You could go down to that 75,000 area. That's why I'm taking the time to show you these support levels and resistance levels. If we rally, this is an area you want to be watching. It looks very similar to the Bitcoin 4-hour chart. Bitcoin trades around the clock, so it looks very, very similar. We got the diversions. Maybe it's not done yet, but again, I think that if it is, if we can rally, you got that possible inverse head and shoulders if we can come back up to this resistance area. This is the support zone between the January low and the tariff sell-off low that we had right there. Now, again, we have a bullish divergence very similar to the bearish divergence that gave us the peak at the inauguration day, which I talked about at the time. This bullish divergence right here only gave us this bounce. It got rejection at the 200 here in the 50 period in the daily time frame. So we've seen this drop. We're going to be watching. Do we try to carve out a bottom with yesterday's low, or move a little bit lower, drop below the 200 and try to carve out a bottom? Or do we just see a bigger drop on Bitcoin back to those levels? We'll be watching. But again, you have a bullish divergence now on the histogram. Do we get another reference point of it and go lower? Or again, do we confirm a higher low and we go on our way? Eventually, we're going to try to rebound. Could we do that surrounding the 200 period? We could. If markets get rattled further, go down to that next level of support between 74 and 77,000 before we get any kind of meaningful bounce. And then the divergences here would just give us counter trends. So again, do the divergences produce a reversal, or do they just give us a bounce? That's what we're going to be watching. Over here, the divergence gave us a reversal. Does this one do the same thing? 4-hour chart of Bitcoin here. As I'm making the video, Bitcoin's pulling back a little bit more. It's now down about 1/4%, just under 1/4%. Same thing here. We had these intraday divergences. Here it is on the 30-minute chart. Again, is this just giving us a bounce and we're going to end up selling out more, or can it produce a reversal? We had the divergence on the 15-minute chart here, a couple of divergences. This one just gave us a bounce and then we went lower. Do we see the same thing now happen? Here we've rallied up to the 200 on the 15-minute chart and stalled there. Do we see a push above that 200 period, and then we have resistance directly overhead here, this horizontal resistance, should we attempt to go higher? I talked about the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders pattern. So far that is not playing out, but again, so far this low from yesterday is holding. We'll see if it continues to hold or if we try to take it out. Now here is 60-minute chart. I talked about that possible inverse head and shoulders. Maybe it doesn't play out if we try to take this low out or up below that 200 period moving average. We had the bullish diversions here, just gave us a bounce. Had the bullish diversions, triple bullish diversions here. So far, it's given us a bounce to the 50 period moving average on the 60-minute chart. Got to be able to get back above that if we're going to try to clear overhead resistance and move towards the 200 period moving average. We'll be watching. Over here, we took out the 50 period moving average, which we are now stalling at, and we saw the RSI drop below 50. We got a 50-50 sell signal on the 60-minute chart. The RSI has been consistently below 50, and the pull-ups have been counter trends. The pull-ups have been the counter trends, rallying back up to the 50 period and getting rejection, and the 200 period over here. But rallying up towards the 50 here, here, and here, we got rejection. Then we got the bullish diversions, and then we rallied up to the 50 level on the RSI, moving towards the 50 level and stalled there. And then here, got just above the 50 level, and we stalled at that 50 period moving average. So again, going to be watching. Can we get back above the 50 period? Does this low hold, or do we take it out? If we take it out, do we drop below the 200 and find a bottom surrounding the 200, or do we end up dropping down to the 74 to 77,000 area? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Our RSI is got to get back into the positive region, and we got to get back above 50 if we're going to attempt a recovery. So that's where we're at here with Bitcoin. Push diversions on the MACD, but we're stalling and we're still in the negative region. Notice, again, we dropped as we broke down from the rising wedge. We dropped into the negative region on the MACD, and we've been there ever since. We got a bullish diversion. So far, it's just given us a bounce. The bullish cross here gave us a bounce. Again, you got to get into positive territory, got to go into positive territory on the MACD and the RSI if we're going to see this end here in the 60-minute time frame. We're continuing to push to the lows of the session right now. For our Thursday session, in the video, Bitcoin is down 0.70% at the moment. So again, rejection at the 50, at least so far. We'll be watching to see if support can hold. Do we get a higher low, or do we take this level out? Is this a counter trend, or is this a bottoming process for the short term surrounding our 200 period moving average?